Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just resigned on Monday. Take a listen to his resignation speech.
So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
This effectively puts an end to 9 years in power as head of the Canadian government, but Trudeau won't be stepping down immediately. It just means he won't be running for re-election come later this year. He also suspended Parliament until March 24th, which means Canadians won't get an election before May at the earliest, which means Trudeau will still remain in charge when Donald Trump takes office in 2 weeks. Speaking of bilateral relations between the U.S. and Canada, two of the largest trading partners anywhere on earth, Trudeau has been mocked by the media as being weak ever since Trump won the election back in November. Take a look at this Financial Post article, for example. If Trump walks all over Canada, it's because Trudeau made it weak. A flurry of satirical articles and angry comebacks follow U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's recent crack about making Canada the 51st state. If you haven't followed the story already, this is what Trump had to say about implementing tariffs on Canada, as well as subsidizing Canada. We may as well make them a state, he said. Take a listen.
But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function. Why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either.
He also suggested and doubled down on his previous idea that Wayne Gretzky, hockey legend Wayne Gretzky, should run as prime minister. Take a listen to what he said.
They rely on our military. It's all fine, but, they got to pay for that. It's very unfair. I have so many great friends. One of them is the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I said, run for prime minister. You'll win it'll take 2 seconds. But he said, well, am I going to run for prime minister or governor? You tell me. I said, I don't know. Let's make it governor. I like it better. But no, something's going to have to be done.
But it's not just foreign partners making fun of Canada. People within the Liberal Party of Canada have been calling for Trudeau to resign. There's been mounting pressure for his resignation in the last couple of weeks. Take a listen to what George Chahal had to say, for example. He was a Liberal MP in Calgary. Canadians were asking for change, and I've expressed quite publicly that we need to bring forward change as we move forward. He said, I think this gives us an opportunity to bring forward that change through new policy ideas and new leadership. Other Liberal MPs also echoed similar sentiments. Peter Fragiskatos, for example, said that this is vital. We have to open up the path to a leadership context because that's where people are tested. And we need the best person in place to take on Pierre Poilievre, Conservative leader. According to this National Post article, Liberal MPs have already been meeting to discuss the next steps for the party. Trudeau's resignation this week comes following the resignation of Chrystia Freeland, Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, back in December. This is her very strongly worded resignation letter that she posted on X. She said, Dear Prime Minister, it has been the honor of my life to serve in government, working for Canada and Canadians. We have accomplished a lot together. On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in cabinet. Upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from the cabinet. Our country today faces a grave challenge. The incoming administration in the United States is pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including a threat of 25% tariffs. We need to take that threat extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks which can ill afford and which can make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. There's been several speculations as to why she resigned. Some theories postulate that Trudeau was possibly going to throw her under the bus because of Canada's dire fiscal situation. So just how dire is Canada's fiscal position? Well, according to the National Post, the economic statement showed Canada's deficit is now forecast to be $62 billion, more than 50% higher than the initially projected $40 billion contained in Freeland's spring budget. The economy is slumping, causing growth predictions to tick down and government revenues to be revised down by $5.5 billion less than projected in April. Opposition leaders, of course, had responses to the resignation of Trudeau this week. Here's a letter from Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP. Justin Trudeau has let you down over and over. He let you down on the cost of housing and groceries. He let you down on fixing healthcare. It doesn't matter who leads the Liberals, they don't deserve another chance. Conservatives are jumping at the opportunity to take from you and give more to CEOs. You will pay the price of Poilievre's cuts. If you oppose callous conservative cuts, if you oppose the rich getting richer while everyone else falls further behind, stand with the NDP this time. Okay, well, speaking of the Conservatives, here is Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservatives' response. Take a listen.
Good day. Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving. But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years. All Liberal politicians actively worked to pass into law the job-killing inflationary carbon tax, a tax that Carbon Tax Carney endorsed in his book. All supported a law quadrupling the tax over the next 5 years. All voted for or actively supported Trudeau's out-of-control spending, debt, and immigration. All passed Trudeau's housing policies that doubled the cost of homes. All Liberal politicians helped pass catch and release bail and house arrest for the most rampant reoffenders, policies that increased violent crime 50%, gun crime 116%, and hate crime by 250%. So given that Liberal MPs and leadership contenders unanimously supported everything Trudeau has done, why dump him now, right before an election? Have they had a change of heart? Is it because they feel guilty that they doubled housing costs, hiked taxes, unleashed crime, broke immigration, forced a quarter of the population into poverty?
This development didn't just happen overnight. Trudeau's popularity has been falling for quite some time. Take a listen to what Daryl Bricker, CEO of Ipsos Global, had to say on my show about the falling popularity of Liberals. Can you comment on polling and the level of popularity there?
Well, there is no popularity. I mean, the gap between the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party in Canada now is, depending on the poll that you look at, anywhere between 15 and 24 points. Let's say on average 20 points. That's one difference between Canada and the United States right now. There was, it was a very close election in the United States. When you look at popular support for the two candidates, separated by maybe a couple of points. In Canada, the separation is 20 points. If there was an election held tomorrow, the Liberal Party would suffer an historic loss. The government doesn't seem to have the capacity at the moment to be able to change the public view. Public views are very settled on the government. So essentially all we're doing right now, David, is just watching days go by on the calendar. Nothing's changing.
There's a lot for Canadians to be angry about. Like Jagmeet Singh said, housing has been unaffordable for many Canadians for many, many years, if not decades, and it continues to get only worse. There's a shortage of housing that the government has been unable to solve. Take a listen to what Ron Butler had to say about this issue and what he predicts to happen to the housing market, in particular the condo market.
We have seen an absolute catastrophic problem developing in investor-driven condominiums in 416. It is far worse than Vancouver's issues. Vancouver has issues, but Ontario is the epicenter of an unmanageable pricing problem. We have brand new products coming on the market, which has been 5 or 6, or in some cases 7 years in development. This new product is priced so grossly higher than resale products right across the street. We have a building with a $1,400 a square foot. That's the price that people paid, and they're expected to close next year. $1,400 a square foot. The building across the street from them, which is 3 years older, has a resale product at 900 a square foot. The delta is completely unmanageable. These products were purchased 5 or 6 years ago. These tiny condos were purchased by investors 5 or 6 years ago with some absolutely ridiculous assumptions. The assumptions were, much in the case of the Dutch tulip bubble, that prices would simply go up eternally and forever. Another assumption would be that 2% interest would continue forever, and that mass immigration would continue forever. All of these things have become untrue, and the feasibility of even closing on these condominiums, and there's about 35 to 40,000 of them coming on in the next 12 months, is doubtful.
Take a look at this graph compiled by National Bank. The monthly mortgage payment on median home price in Vancouver is now above 100% of the median income. In Toronto, that's 90%. In Canada, the national average is 60%, just above 60%. Think about that. More than 100% of your median income is needed to cover your monthly mortgage payments. People can't afford to buy a home. Rents are sky high. People are moving out of the city. And in fact, according to polls, more than 1 in 3 British Columbians are considering leaving the province altogether because of housing affordability. This presents a major structural challenge to the country as smart, talented people can't afford to live here. They're going to move to another province or another country altogether, further exacerbating the brain drain problem that Canada has already faced for several decades. Productivity is likely to decline. Economic growth will wane. Housing affordability is the root cause of many of these problems. Let's put this stat into perspective once more. Here is a chart showing the income required to purchase a home in select Canadian cities. No surprise, Vancouver is near the top, $219,000 in September 2024 and $214,000 in October. Prices are starting to come down a little bit, but not by much. Toronto follows, Hamilton, Calgary, so on and so forth. Toronto is ranked as one of the most expensive cities in the world. Canadians aren't particularly getting richer either, compared to their peers at least. Take a look at this graph. GDP per capita in the U.S. compared to Canada. Red is Canada, the U.S. is blue, and it's very clear. Americans are richer. I mean, I'm not saying Americans aren't facing housing affordability issues of their own, but it's nowhere near as bad as Canada. And keep in mind that the productivity gap between the U.S. and Canada is widening. So not only is Canada getting more expensive, it's also falling behind in economic growth. Canada's GDP per capita is not catching up to its OECD peers, and the wage growth in Canada has just been lagging behind wage growth in the U.S. According to StatsCan, the Canadian median income was $68,400 Canadian in 2021, whereas in the same year, the U.S. median income was $70,000 U.S., according to the U.S. Census. It doesn't look like a massive difference, but keep conversion rates in mind. $68,000 Canadian is roughly $50,000 in USD terms. Household debt is a percentage of disposable income out of control in Canada. You think Americans have it bad? Take a look at this chart. Household debt has been skyrocketing for Canadians, reaching above 180% of disposable income, while the U.S. remains at around 100%, but it has been coming down ever since the middle of the 2000s, whereas the Canadian situation is only getting worse. So how did markets respond to the news that Trudeau resigned? Take a look at this CAT USD chart. The Canadian dollar moved up against the US dollar on the news, the biggest move in months. The TSX Composite also moved on the news. Canadian mining stocks moved slightly, but not by much. And the Canadian 10-year government bond yield jumped as well. Take a listen to what Jim Thorne, chief market strategist at Wellington Altus Private Wealth, had to say about the future of Canada's economy.
We are living in the past up here, and we need to get on our front foot and figure out what Canada is going to and how we're going to participate and how we can grow with the Americans as they go through this generational structural adjustment.
What is the appropriate government response then to a 25% tariff in Canada?
The appropriate response is to sit down at the table and say, what can we negotiate? What are the deals? What did Trump say on the New York Stock Exchange? He needs energy for AI. They do. How can Canada be a part of this? We've got to stop throwing tantrums and try to figure out what we're going to do in a new digital age where we do not have an innovative sector up here in Canada. How are we going to coexist? So, hey, do we want to increase, the Churchill Falls and get more hydroelectric power? What about uranium? How can we help as opposed to acting like high school students and throwing temper tantrums in the cafeteria? This is real. This is important. And it's unfortunate that our politicians and leaders aren't acting with a little bit more maturity.
So what's next for the Liberal Party of Canada? Well, there's a number of potential replacements for Trudeau in line, Chrystia Freeland being one of them. Mark Carney, former head of the Bank of Canada, is also another. Anita Anand, Transport Minister. François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. Melanie Joly, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Dominique LeBlanc, Ministry of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs. And Christy Clark, former provincial premier. Poly market odds, I'll put this on the screen, place Mark Carney as the most likely to take over Trudeau's place in the Liberal Party by the next election at 43% as of the time of the taping. Who will be the next prime minister is another poll that's running on Poly markets. People are betting on this. 89% Pierre Poilievre. So people are betting on the fact that the Conservatives will win, even if the Liberals replace Trudeau with somebody else. So what do you think is going to happen to the future of Canada? Who do you think is going to win the next election, either by May or October? Do you think the Conservatives will win and Pierre Poilievre will be the next PM like Poly Market is currently predicting? Or do you think the Liberals can turn it around by nominating somebody else to replace Trudeau? Comment below what you think is going to happen come this election. And also comment, if you're Canadian, what you like to see change. The biggest changes to your country that you want to see happen regardless of who takes over come this next federal election. I'm David Lynn. Stay tuned for more. Subscribe for more content. Thank you for watching.